Good morning. How are you? This is Jim the Keys Bartender coming to you from Key Largo. Yes, a beautiful Key Largo, nice and dry and mid-70s, probably be close to 80 today. Not a perfect day considering what my family went through, but everyone goes through this stuff. We had a much beloved, I don't even want to call her a pet because she's part of the family. Roxy, our 8-pound Chihuahua Terrier mix, we had to put down on Sunday. And it happens everywhere. I know. And people, it's hard to feel that sense of loss when you talk about an animal, when you put it in context with people losing their loved ones, other people. But, love is love. You love your animals. The depth of love for an animal who you make a part of your family could be just as deep and wide-ranging as a love of a human. It's a living thing. So our pet Roxy was a rescue. I wanted to talk about her because I know it's a comedy show. I'm trying to be the thing. But, she did add a lot to our lives and a lot of happiness, a lot of comedy sometimes. So originally, Abby's now deceased ex-husband who died approximately, it had to be 8 years ago, this next month, had gotten Roxy when Sky was 2, so that would have been 13 and a half years ago, and she was a puppy. So she was around 14 years old, Roxy. Tiny little, and I posted a picture on the cover. She was just a little dog, a little hyper sometimes, barked a lot, but she was very loving, very friendly to everyone, not very nippy or anything. She'd bark at mainly female dogs. She liked the boy dogs, which obviously being a female. And Roxy, it's hard to talk about her, but she was everywhere with us. We hadn't taken her to Poland with us, so it was always trepidation for us when we had to go away for a while. Who was going to take care of her? How would she be taken care of? One time we did the boarding, pet boarding, and that we did that once, and that wasn't really keen. And then another time we had her stay with friends. The last couple times, but this past year, about when we came back from Poland, there was a precipitous decline in her health. And it was age and multiple things. And it's just, I won't go into details. She just lost a step. And in recent weeks, it was even more dramatic. She started experiencing, it seemed like Alzheimer's, more seizures, problem breathing, multiple problems. And we were taking her to an animal hospital. And originally we were going to have a biopsy done on her, but there was just multiple things going on. And it was such a steep decline that she was either 14 or 15. We weren't sure. And the doctor said, this is, she's at the limit, near her age limit with considering these health issues she's developing. And she had other things going. She was just, before the seizures started, hallucinating and things like that. So this past Sunday, I'm at work. Well, it's a double. It's not about me. My wife's home with Sky. We're looking at her before I go into work. We're drinking coffee, looking at the dog and Roxy. And Roxy seems confused and she's just not herself and just not sleeping at all. She's not napping. She didn't nap the night before. She didn't go napping at all. She was just popping up, barking. And it was just, and she started going into seizures. And we couldn't have her any place. She'd hop on the bed and she'd hop off. We worried about her breaking her legs because she's a little skinny little thing. And multiple issues. And she seemed like she was in pain. And I'm at work getting these calls and I'm thinking, and it's a Sunday and we're in a smaller community next to a large community in Miami. So there was a capability up on the mainland. We get up the mainland, we could go to a animal hospital or something like that and do the hard decision, because we were making the hard decision. We were just leaning and say, listen, we're not going to let her. She's having a hard time walking. She was acting like she was paralyzed in the back sometimes, and she couldn't stand, and had a problem going to the bathroom, and all these things going on at one time, and every day just getting worse. We just made the decision. But the only problem was that it was a Sunday, and we'd have to go through the night with her, and it wasn't an issue for us. It was just thinking about what she would have to go through. So I'm making phone calls. Abby's trying to contact. I have a lot more contacts than her, and then all of a sudden on Sunday it just keeps on getting worse and worse, the reports coming from home. And you can only imagine when you're away and you're getting reports from your family about something going on, right? And this happened to be in particular about her pet. So I end up getting contact with a friend of ours, Dr. Jeff Bailey here in Key Largo, who said he would meet us, and it was around 7:15, and he said we can meet him at his office, which was a little less than a half a mile away from our house. So I talked to my coworkers and stuff like that. It was Sunday. It was moderately busy, but my coworkers understood. I left and they covered for me. I went home. When I got home, you could tell Abby was crying all day. So was Guy, and Roxy. They said she wasn't doing well. And I got home and there was Roxy coming up to the door, and her tail was wagging. She was excited to see me, and she had the steps. The steps that she could do, just like she was when I first met her, when she was just 1 year old, or 2 years old. She was her old self, and then she descended into the seizure again. But we picked her up, brought her in the car. I'm 58 years old. I had never had to do this at this point in my life. I never had a dog when I was in my middle ages or anything like that where I had to make that decision. Other pets, they died from accidents and things like that. And when I was younger, it was taken care of by my parents, and I didn't know about it. So this time, we bundled the whole family together. Sky, who's 15, I said, you don't have to go if you don't want to. She wouldn't hear of anything else. She's crying, and we're all going. It was surreal. And I know you've all been through it, or some of you have been through it. I haven't really seen a person die in front of me at 58. I've been there for my great uncle. But I visited people. I've never been in a place where it happened. I've seen people after they had passed. I've been on accident scenes when they had passed, but I've never been there. So we show up. I won't go into details. It was very traumatic. It was very surreal to see something you love so much going. She was in the process of seizures, and he said, I'll give her something to sedate her to stop the seizure. So he did that. And Dr. Bailey was very, very thoughtful about it, handled it really smooth. And then when he gave her the shot, she laid down and sedated. And then the final. And we were a mess after that. It was 7:30 when it happened. It happened in all 15 minutes. And we drove the family back. They're crying, and we're trying to talk about it. Sky doesn't want to talk about it. Abby and I don't want to talk about it. And she goes, "You're going to have to go back to work." And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to have to go back to work." So I go back. We drop off. I drop off Sky and Abby. I have to go back into work for 2 more hours. Not that obviously they would have, my coworkers and my boss, they would have been fine with me not going back. But what's the point? What's the point at that point? We're going to be commiserating for years about how much we loved this animal. So all this time I was making the phone calls while I was at work and getting these reports. I realized the dance we do in the service industry. You're not supposed to be on your phone. You're not supposed to be on your phone when you're at work, right? But there are certain situations where you have to be on the phone. In smaller places, sometimes there's no one else. Meaning, at the time, there's no one else. You don't have the depth in employees. At bigger places, you can slide someone over. You're going to be shorthanded, but sometimes you don't have it. We can't take the chef out of the kitchen or the bartender from behind the bar because there's only 2 people on the floor, right? So I'm fielding phone calls, trying to get a hold of someone, talking to someone. It's luckily my coworkers. I had Lala, who are one of my coworkers, and a friend of mine, the former general manager of the restaurant I worked in, came in with her husband, and she started making phone calls for me about 40 minutes before, and they all helped. And a former coworker of mine from Gilbert's, she was in Costa Rica, and she made a phone call for me. People were reaching out to help, and they did. But it was really hard to smile and act. People, how's everything? And it's going like that. That's all you can say. And some people I told, it's hard to smile. It's really hard to smile when you're ready to do that. So when I came back, people have no idea they have no idea what you're going through. We wear these faces, but they have no idea. They could say, well, that bartender gets kind of moody sometimes. Probably he's moody, probably he's mad at something someone said or something like that. But, which they have a right to think that, right? Because I am not perfect. So I came back into work after I had put my dog to sleep, and I told him, I go like this. I said, this is what, and then I started talking about the incident, and it was fresh. And when it was fresh, I couldn't do it. I mean, I couldn't do it without crying. Thinking of my dog. When I came in today, when I went to the gym, I came in today. I'm doing a podcast now. I'm looking at the drapes from our family room. And we keep draped off. It's kind of like a little privacy. This guy's uses it. She has a little makeup table in there, but it's an extra bedroom pretty much that we have off to the side here. And I have a desk, and she does her hair, and we got a bed if someone comes to visit. But it's that extra room. But that was Roxy's room too, and it was near sliding glass doors. And Roxy would stay in there, and every time we come home, she'd come up to the door with a tail wagging. You still expect. So the pain is easier to take. I'm not crying now. But it's funny how we do invest these feelings, these deep, deep ties we have. And it's imperceptible. Like, you don't see it, and you don't really value it. You see someone walking around with their pet. I knew someone that had an iguana, and they had attachments to their iguana. The people have birds, and they have fish, and all this stuff. And they just invest these feelings in them. And we imagine, I believe, my dog loved us, slept with me every night. She would some nights she'd start off with my daughter's room, and then in the middle of the night, she'd get up and come to our room. Recently, she was staying with us all night. and she would curl up next to me. And the last couple of weeks, she would get up in the middle of the night at 3 in the morning. Besides me having, because I'm getting older, I got to pee in the middle of the night. I got to get up and take the dog out because I don't know if she has to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. But you do it because you love them. And I would have done it for however long as possible if she didn't have seizures or anything thought was pain. Just popping up in the middle of the night was not the bar for that. So I just felt it was my duty to talk about how much we loved her and how much we found how important she was. A member of family, and I didn't like this. It's funny because I don't like to say that we owned her, because she pretty much owned us, because we never bought her. We were her family. And there's nothing you can do with these things we invest these feelings on that have such an ephemeral thing in life, like people. People pass away all the time. I just found out one of my acquaintances at the gym. I saw him today, and I was wrapped up in my own little, they say bullshit, worrying about my pet that passed away, and his wife passed away 6 weeks ago. And I never had a chance to come up and talk to him. I never thought to ask where his wife was. Since the pandemic, we didn't see everyone, and everyone's routine was different. And people wearing masks, and you're not sure, who's there and what they changed. And I saw the man come in, and I never said, he was always friendly. Matter of fact, one time 10 years ago, he's still here. Well, I'm endeavoring to talk to him. I'm gonna wait around. I go to the gym often, so I'm sure I'm gonna run into him again, and make sure he knows. And I remember his wife; they were so sweet. And I had one time I was leaving the gym, and my car had, I don't know if I left the lights on or whatever it was, or the battery was dying, but I needed a jump, and he gave me a jump and got me out of there. And he was such a helpful, thoughtful man. And another man who I used to see before the pandemic, and my father's not doing so well. And there was, I know I'm relating the story, but I seen him, and he reminds me of father, looked like my father. And since the pandemic, and he was healthy, working out. My father used to work out all the time, and this guy ends up, I hear he died 6 months ago. So it's not all doom and gloom. I'm trying to, yes, a comedy show. It is. We have to, there is sadness in comedy sometimes. There is sadness, and there's also happiness. Because the one thing that brings back, when I came home after work to be with my family, we pulled everything that reminded us of Roxy. We took her pillows and her food and all that stuff, and we took it out. I pulled hid the leashes and all that stuff. We have her pictures. We're not going to delete her pictures or anything like that, but we have her collar and her tag. And that's important. I'm not big on knickknacks and things like that, because that wasn't that person. When you see things, if someone had a possession, or had a favorite sweater, and if you're wearing your grandma's favorite sweater and stuff like that, that's great. That's great. It's just not one of those things that item is not them. Is not them, and I don't need that item to make me remember them. And I have to be cognizant that other people lost things too, and how important it is. Because we get rather parochial about things that occur to us. Things that occur to us. People lose their whole families. Just crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. And it's sad, but it's also reminds us that we're human. So, let's move on. I know it's hard to move on because you got to move on. we're not making plans to get another pet right away because we're not ready to lose that anymore because we're just going to, we think maybe a sign of disrespect or, and I don't want to have to do that again. And we do go away for weeks at a time, or they do go away for weeks at a time. It used to kill me to have to leave her here. It's hard for me to shut up about it, isn't it? Say, Jim, shut the fuck up. So we're back to doing what we have to do, and we are coming up on Thanksgiving. And I know I'm going to be thankful for it, but I also was concerned with Thanksgiving, even though I do not like turkey. I do not like making turkey. Not a big fan of turkey. No, not turkey's blah meat to me. So it's like I'm a steak guy. I could do some chicken. It's protein to me. You make some turkey soup. You know what? I can go for a hot turkey sandwich, a regular turkey sandwich. But you got to put so much. How many turkey? Like if you can roast beef sandwich and just put meat on bread, and that'd be good. I can also use all the other stuff too, but turkey just didn't do it. So I was looking for turkey at the supermarket, and all they had was those fucking giant turkeys that were 24, 25 pounds, and I don't want to be eating turkey for 2 weeks, and I found my turkey, and it's sitting in the freezer right now. So we also started getting, we hear about, there's going to be a stuffing shortage. There's going to, get the stuff. Well, we're in the Keys. I'm thinking that we're going to have enough down here. I still have to get cranberry sauce, don't I? So it's next week. Thanksgiving's next week. We're going to start thinking about getting ready for that. But such an interesting concept that we're not going to be able to do Thanksgiving because we have a turkey. You think turkey is the essential part of Thanksgiving? Think of it. Thanksgiving. Giving thanks for what you have. And we have a lot to be thankful for, especially here. And I'm sure if you as listeners, if you have the free time to do that, you have a lot to be thankful for. And we're going to focus on that. Maybe a little sad that not everyone we had in the previous years around. My sister-in-law hates this time of year. She just has this feeling that the end of the year is when some of the worst things that occur. She's not a big fan of this time of year, and she in recent history for rightful reasons for her. Luckily, she does not listen to the podcast, and I don't want to bring her any hardship and things like that. But Thanksgiving is also the uplifting part of it, isn't it? Being grateful for everything that we have. It's so easy to get wrapped up in stuff, in especially like in restaurant business. People talk about their tips and stuff. I make like $500 a night, $600 a night. I did so well. I met this thing, had such a good time, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's immediate gratification. The things we have. But if you look back upon your life, the way it is and what it could have been if you were born someplace else or some other time, I think it was John Rousseau, one of the political philosophers, Rousseau, who said, man in nature, or man in the wild, his life is brutal and short. Like prehistoric man, prehistoric, Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal. They were lucky to make it to 30. And if you think about it, hundreds of years ago, most of your time was avoiding being worm food. Yeah, not being killed, not dying from disease, not being killed by a raiding party. Making sure you can make it through winter. I mean, how terrifying. How terrifying is September and October if you're in a gathering culture in the Northern Hemisphere and you had a shitty harvest? Because you're thinking, oh my God, I hope we don't have too bad of a a winter. And before you're able to, my gosh, you go back far enough, people didn't know to salt things down and preserve things, canning, and it was only the last couple hundred years that people thought they could do those things. Drying out, salting meats and fish and things like that. People would end up getting real skinny in those awful months. A lot of these hunter-gatherer societies used to follow the game herd, like the buffalo, right? To get your protein, your meat. And then you're foraging in winter. And if you're a good hunter, you probably be able to, with the Native American population, they could track when there's snow and they figured out how to survive. And they could thrive through a hard winter. It's amazing. They didn't depend on crop as much and things like that. And they had things to be thankful for. And life got easier. And when life got easier and you started, not just here, I skipped from hunting, gathering, all this life getting easier. But, as it progressed with farmers and canning and being able to have food in the winter and a supply chain that was supplied by originally ships, wagons, trains, all sorts of trucks now. In our type, in the first world, in the developed world, we're leading lives that no one's ever even dreamed of, 300 years ago. Central heating, central air, indoor plumbing. There wasn't a concept for electricity when they've seen electricity from static electricity before. They didn't know what it was. They saw lightning. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know that was something to be harnessed and used and that we're going to be able to get our information, our entertainment, to travel using it. They didn't know, and they'd be able to. We chased away the darkness with the light. What was it? 3 weeks ago, I was at the Catch Restaurant in Key Largo while I'm working. It was daytime, and they were playing a golf match in Dubai, I think it was. And it was at night. And had the giant floodlights going and things like that in the middle of the desert, which was a huge waste of water, I imagine. They have a golf course. And it's this lush green surrounded by desert, which has to be interesting when they have like one of those called haboobs, sandstorms. When they come in, the sandstorms probably always wants to deposit sand on top of the greens, but I don't know how they kept that off. But it's dark. You can see outside the lighting is completely dark, and these people are playing golf. And the reason they did that is because it's 120 degrees in the daytime. And you can't have people out there, world-class golfers out there. And at night, they're wearing long-sleeve T-shirts to stay warm. That's how we harness the environment nowadays. In downtown Tokyo, in skyscrapers, there's people at this moment hitting golf balls in enclosed areas at a driving range, maybe 40 floors up, and everything's netted in. And they may have like 4 or 5 story, whatever the whole situation. But that we've done this to kind of show how we conquered the environment. It's not quite conquered yet because we have flooding and things like that. But they're making artificial islands and things like that they never even thought about. People wouldn't even consider that a possibility that would happen. I'm sure when someone had a hand pump for water and say, you know what? They used to have the well, and with the well, you drop a bucket in and you have it all. Then they rig having a roller above it with a rope, and you drop the pail and you crank it down, you bring it up, you get your water. And then people figure out, we can enclose this, and the pump will create suction and bring water out. And then people say, why do we have to do the pump outside the house? Why don't we do the pump inside the house? And for a brief moment, because once they figured out something like that, someone was going to figure out another way to bring indoor plumbing. Wealthy people thought that, they say, well, listen, we don't want to have to go outside to use the outhouse, so we'll go inside and you'll have to take it out. The servants. And people said, well, we can do one better. We can build a privy that we will wash it away. And then another modern convenience. Being able to travel the same day 1,000 miles away and then come back in the evening and have dinner with your family. That was not a concept until the last, 50 years? You could do it 60 years ago. 60 years ago was 1950, but it was still kind of a little tight, 1950, we were still using prop-driven planes and stuff like that, and it would take like 4 or 5 hours to fly to 1,000 miles, and then you'd have to come back. And that was, usually when you go 1,000. Nowadays, 1,000 miles, you go up there. It's a 2-hour trip. You could leave at 6 a.m. on your flight. Get there at 8:30. Make your meeting at 9:30, 12, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Get on the flight and be back home. And if we don't do anything stupid before then, it's probably going to get a little easier than that. So this Thanksgiving, we can think about those things. We could think about the pandemic and how hopefully that's gone. I'm still seeing little flare-ups here. You see people getting sick and having not to come to work and things like that. And maybe for a little while, but not the whole thing. And then we have a Christmas season where, we had Thanksgiving where people can go to other houses, and then we have the Christmas. Now, whether the news reports we talk about, you may not be able to get a hold of your brand new cell phone, a new television, or your new car. Well, we just went through a pandemic. Should we be worrying about those things? Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should think about, because we have this supply chain issue, maybe we should think about not throwing everything away. Maybe we can send it back and get it reconfigured, right? If you have an item and it's out of date, why throw the whole thing out? Why not save the important parts of it and just say, hey, listen, we'll just upgrade it. Just like you would a house. Most times you don't, when people buy a house, they don't tear the whole thing down and rebuild a new one. We should be able to, think in the Mr. Potato Head. Is a Mr. Potato Head the best metaphor for it? There's probably another one. But computers, original hobbyist computers. That's probably the best metaphor. We could take motherboards, put them in, increase the memory, get a new keyboard, get a new monitor. That would be like a great product. Say, listen, we're going to sell you a computer. the laptop. We figured this is the smallest we probably want to get it. So what we'll do is we're going to change. We'll be able to slide the guts out, the battery out when it gets old. Replace the screen. Why throw out the whole thing at the end? Why does it have to be being able to thrown out? Right? People don't get thrown out when things start going bad. You don't get a new model in. They do die sometimes. And they decompose. They should, somewhat. So why don't we do that? Why don't we do that with cars and things like that? Just take them back. People say, we don't need every car to be an antique. They don't have to last forever. But you can take it. If the body's still good, take the body, replace the motor, replace the brakes, do this, take the brakes. And in Cuba, they still have 50s eras taxis, cars running around because of how well they are at replacing things. It's home industries where they build their own brake pads and replacement parts for these vehicles. I wish we could have replaced. I wish we could have replaced the parts that weren't too well on Roxy, but there were just too many of them failing. You can't. It's hard to do that with people. Once the brain goes bad, it's like you're not going to really replace that, right? But eventually, you might be able to. Maybe they can replace the brain. Who knows? You can't say that definitively. No one really 100 years ago, maybe some physicist would have ever thought that the microwave was a concept. Like say, we're going to beam energy to heat your food. It's going to take about 5 minutes to cook that turkey dinner. What is that? You hear that bird in the background? That's new life. And I got my neighbor talking next door. Boy, you are... What? That's the blue jay giving me hell, who was ready to get food. It's not going to shut up. Okay, blue jay, I'm going to come out. Well, I think instead of closing the windows, I'm just going to call an end to this episode. I'd like to thank you all for listening. Please download as many episodes as you can manage. The more downloads we have, the better ranking we have. The better opportunities to get sponsors. And I do appreciate that. I really do. And thank you for listening. Please share with your friends. Let's get as many listeners as possible. Have a great day, and I will be back again, I think tomorrow morning. I will. And thank you for being there for me. And I'm sorry if I spent the first half of the show unburdening my memories, but I do appreciate it. Thanks for being there for me. Bye.